So, honored guests, fellows, colleagues, welcome to the Institute for Human Sciences. I am Ludger Hagedorn, permanent fellow here at the IWM. A very warm welcome to you on this evening that is dedicated to the launch, official launch and kick-off and celebration a bit of our new very important and challenging program on digital humanism. And when saying that it is a new program, I admit it is a new program for us at the IWM. It is not at all a new program to our main speaker of tonight, who is one of the initiators of initiatives on digital humanism. Digitization opens unprecedented opportunities in very many areas of society and of human life, but it also entails unseen dangers, perils, pitfalls, and raises serious concerns. These two poles, I think, is what opens the field for our new program on digital humanism. I'm very happy to welcome you all for this special evening dedicated to the opening of this program. First of all, let me welcome our honored guests of tonight. This is the delegation from this is a long name, from the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. Really, it's just like 6 areas or 7 areas that you're taking care of. This is quite a lot. The ministry is our sponsor for this fellowship, new fellowship, and our partner on this new fellowship, and we are very grateful for this cooperation. And namely, I would want to welcome Mrs. Henriette Spierer, who is the Director General for the Department of Innovation and Technology at the ministry, and Mr. Michael Wiesmüller, Head of Department for Key Enabling Technologies at the very same ministry. And Mr. Wiesmüller is our dear cooperation partner in this and initiator also of the program. Also, I would like very much to welcome Mrs. Gerti Kappel, Dean of the Informatics at the Technical University of Vienna. In the back, very warm welcome. And also Stefan Woltran from the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning at the Technical University, also in the very back. Most welcome. We are very happy about the cooperation with the TU and with the Center on this new program. And last, and in this case it's really true, last but certainly not least, Hannes Werthner, Professor Hannes Werthner from the Institute of Information Systems Engineering at the Technical University of Vienna, a professor there, former dean of the Faculty of Informatics at the Technical University, and this is maybe the most important, or certainly the most important thing, one of the main initiators, maybe I'm not wrong to say the main initiator, Mr. Werthner, the main initiator of the Vienna-based initiative on digital humanism and of the very important Vienna Manifesto on digital humanism. A warm welcome to all of you, and I'd like to ask the two of you, our delegation from the ministry, for a little welcome address, please.
So, thank you very much for your very kind words of welcome. We are happy and delighted to be sponsors and partners, so now you do have to endure a couple of words from our side. Obviously, an initiator and really important sponsor stands next to me. I just have the honor of welcoming you tonight and saying maybe a couple of words. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here because I've worked just next to this building for two to 3 years as Director of Science and Innovation of the Environment Agency. I switched to the ministry with a very long name, but the very long name really already tells you something about how we, also as the Department for Innovation and Technology, look at digitization. Because we tend to mix up objectives and tools. And I think we want to be a bit clearer on what are our objectives in terms of climate, in terms of humanism, as you call it here, in terms of the environment, in terms of energy, and make it very clear that digital tools can really help us, but they shouldn't really be followed for their own sake. And when I thought about tonight, I'm part of a network of agile policymakers, and there's a little talk by Barry Schwartz on the paradox of choice. And he gave this to Americans. I myself, actually, which is another very touching reason for me for why I'm happy to be here tonight. I myself hail from East Berlin, so it's a special place to be able to welcome you. Barry Schwartz talked to Americans and talked about the paradox of choice, and he gave the example of, you know, all the different stereo systems you can buy in a single store. It was all about digital choice. And then he gave that example of how you sit and watch your child play soccer, and you've got a mobile phone and another BlackBerry and a computer, and even though you do not touch any of these and don't look at it, there might be a call, or you might be tempted to answer, and you do not have the same enjoyment of watching your child play soccer. Something completely different to what you alluded to in terms of the dangers, but it's also a very, very important aspect which we all know and which is important to look at when we think about digital humanism. So thank you very much for organizing tonight's event. I'm already very excited to meet our first junior fellow and also to hear from you. And now I hand over to actually the true partner and sponsor in our ministry, Michael.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Henriette. Thanks for all here in the room, joining our opening. Welcome on the screens. I would thank a lot of people on this. It's a little bit a day of joy, and I would say it would be a real day of joy if we would live in a world where joy is a category. It's really difficult to focus in these times. Walking here, I counted the cars with Ukrainian plates. It were 10, only from the ministry here. And it's very present. And it's very present here since the IWM is, I would say, really a world-class competence center with respect to Eastern Europe. And, well, I will try to focus for some seconds. I just thought it's a little, there is a history. The history is 4 years old. I got through my emails this morning, and I found that the first email I had with Shalini Randeria was in 2018. So it's 4 years old, or 5 chancellors, as we say in Austria, quite some time. Shalini was really, I have to thank her for her patience. She was very patient with us because the situations always changed and so on. And finally, we met Ivan Vejvoda, who took it over. And finally, we reached with Ludger Hagedorn, who supported the finalization and bringing the machine into operation quite recently. I want to welcome Nina Mochnik. Great that you are here. You are our first fellow. For the first fellow, you will stay for the rest of your life. You will be the first BMK fellow on digital humanism. And well, many thanks to Hannes Werthner too. He's, as you've already said, he's really the impresario of the whole story. Just to bridge over to what you will hear now from Hannes Werthner. From my point of view, I'm not a specialist. I'm working in a policy sphere. My impressions that I have on these topics, if you see the last 10 or 15 years, I have the impression it was like the coming up of a thunderstorm. There was one cloud, then was another, and a third one, and the whole thing got into a kind of really, I would say, a really a big challenge which is waiting for us. I wanted to quote one one sentence of the well-known Erik Bjørnofsen, which I like a lot. When he's talking, he said, well, when you talk about really disruptive technologies, you have two options. One is you can either defend the past from the future, meaning delaying the arrival of the new thing and gaining time to adapt to the new technology, or you can do it the other way around. You can defend the future from the past. And what we have done, I think, in the last 15 years or 20 years in Europe is more the second option. We have been completely affirmative, a kind of toxic positivity towards technologies in the last 20 years. And then there were the clouds. The first, I think, with the pervasiveness of those technologies, meaning they are everywhere, and you can feel it around the corner. They became invasive. Invasive means, as you said, in any life situation you have with your children, they are near you, and without noticing, this became more and more important, and this kind of positivity have become toxic in the last 2 or 3 years, or 5 years, I would say, and this is addressed by this topic of digital humanism. I would say one definition for me is digital humanism is the question: how can our highly networked global technoscience scientific world, how can they be part of a modern society, of a modern enlightened democratic society? Some few closing words, because I love this topic and I could talk for a long time, but should come to an end. The meaning of the fellowship, and this is why we got into contact with this institution, is we want to foster a strong, fruitful exchange between humanities, social scientists, and computer science. This is, I would say, the kernel of what we want to achieve. We want to exchange more people who are experts in problem solving, like engineers, and those who are setting problems, problem setters. So engineers and humanities, we want a stronger interaction between what you can call a rationality of means and the rationality of goals. I think this is necessary. And first of all, I think Vienna is a good place to do this. And definitely IWM is the best place that we can find in Vienna to do this. Having this said, thanks again for coming. Thanks for your interest. I do hope, looking a little bit in your direction, this is just the beginning. We have 2 years ahead for a good fellowship program, and probably we will have a longer perspective with respect to digital humanism in Vienna. Thanks a lot.
Just say a few words on the program. So, Mr. Wiesmüller, you just said Vienna is a good place for this. Indeed, I couldn't agree more. I'm also happy that you mentioned us as a good place for this. We're also happy about that. But one thing more to add, I think Vienna is also a very advanced place in the regard of digital humanism, and this is very much thanks to the initiative of Mr. Hannes Werthner. And this brings me to the main program of tonight. The program of tonight will be a talk by Hannes Werthner about the goals of digital humanism. I'm not fully sure what he will present to us, but I'm sure there will also be a bit of a overview of what he has done over recent years. And I really think this is also on an international scale. This is quite pioneering work. And I think you're one of the best partners we could find for this program, and we are grateful for that. So this will be the main talk of tonight by Hannes Werthner. Afterwards, we will be here. We will have the opportunity to discuss your talk with you. I will also invite Nena to the podium to join us, the first junior fellow that was already mentioned. Let me just give in very, very few sentences an overview of the program that we are starting tonight so that you know what we are speaking about, our new fellowship on digital humanism. For the next 4 semesters to come, we will invite a senior fellow to the Institute for Human Sciences each semester, 1 senior fellow each semester. The first senior fellow has already been elected. Senior fellows are invited upon invitation. The first one we have invited is Edward A. Lee from the University of California, Berkeley, a highly renowned specialist in the field, computer scientist, electrical engineer, and a highly successful author and writer. He is one of those people really interested and specializing in the field of humans and machines. 2 of his best-known books, Plato and the Nerd, this is an earlier publication, and the second one, Co-Evolution, The Entwined Futures of Humans and Machines. This gives you an idea of what his work is focusing on. He will be our fellow in May 22. And he will be accompanied by 2 junior fellows. Nena is already here. Kieran Haggerty will be the second fellow. He will arrive next month, and both of you will then spend 1 month at least with him here at the Institute, collaborate with him at the Institute. This is one of the ideas, one among very many others. While being here, Edward A. Lee will also be lecturing at the Technical University. He will be in close contact with the colleagues in the back, whom I mentioned before, so very many initiatives, and we try to bring these initiatives together and set up a network on digital humanism. So 4 senior fellows for the running time of this program, 8 junior fellows whom we invite upon a application procedure. We are right now in the process of selecting the second generation of junior fellows already, who will then come in autumn. Very many events and publications planned in the frame of this program. I will not bother you with this. This is not so highly important tonight. It is planned for 2 years. I think the tasks and the challenges related to this program will probably not be finished in 2 years. So maybe we could think about continuation, but this we will speak about in the future. Hannes Werthner, I think the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation, and I'm really excited to be part of this endeavor. I'm thankful to your institution for taking, let's say, the humanities part of this, I think, very important cooperation. I'm thankful to the ministry for funding it, and I also would like to thank Gerti Kappel and Stefan from the Faculty of Computer Science. I think it's for really tackling the challenge of this field of digitalization. I think it's needed, this multidisciplinary approach. I would especially like to thank you, Mr. Hagedorn, and you, Mr. Wiesmüller, because you were somehow the fathers of this initiative. And without you, it's always like this. There are humans behind. At the end, they're institutions, but at the core are humans. And you have done this. And I thank you for inviting me to be part of that. But let's say the glory should go to you. I'm just a cooperating partner, and I think it's a great initiative, and I'm happy to be part of that. Thank you. What I will do is I will, as you have mentioned, but there was one very important remark you gave. 35 minutes, I had a lot of slides, I had to cut it down. I will talk about what's behind this digital humanism, something on the context and the background, what are we dealing with, and then about this initiative and what happened in the last 3 years, okay? This is more or less what I will do. I have cut the history of computer science and things like that, but maybe this is part of another talk. And I think it would be good for also for cooperating with humanities, having more this, let's say, look on the paradigms we are following. I'm starting with this I really want to underline absolute, not only nonsense, it's absolute nonsense. But it's not about digital humanism. I want you not to underline. But I really want to say this is the response of the first conference on IT and tourism and the internet in '94 in Innsbruck. So it's 25, 26 years ago. And there we had Beat Schmidt from the University of St. Gallen talking about internet and electronic markets. And Larry Press spoke about digital agents and our digital copies in the internet. In case I read today the last issue of the communication of the ACM, and there was also a paper on digital agents. And this was the response of the audience 25 years ago. It's somehow related to the European history on technology and attitude. If you look at this today, we are not looking at the nature, we are making picture of the nature. We are having the copy, producing the copy. We live in a digital world, digital physical world. It's hard to separate. And it's a public space already. We are having a public space, a public good, where participation is mandatory. If you do not participate, there's the danger to be excluded. There are some problems behind that, but at the end, it's radically changed within the last 25, 30 years. From nonsense, people were leaving the room there in Innsbruck. It's not because it was Tyrol. No, I don't want to be against Tyrol. But it was the attitude, okay? What are they talking about? What is he talking, Beat Schmidt, about electronic markets? If they would have listened to him, they would have known that something like Amazon, eBay would come, okay? It was already foreseen. The second thing is that we are experiencing this digital transformation, which really is impacting everything. It's changing the world and us. And it's a complex, technical, socio-economic process. This is the background why we need different disciplines. This is digital humanism about. Otherwise, we will not understand what's happening. Otherwise, we will not understand the dynamics. We won't understand where we can interfere and how we could change things. So you need those different disciplines and understanding this process. The web is already the global infrastructure. It would not work without the web. And informatics and its tools, where I see the internet, the web as one of the results of the informatics, is the operating systems of our society. Here I take the similarity to a computer, where the operating system keeps the computer running. It's really interwoven to everything, it's pervasive, it really makes it's functioning. If you look at the pandemic, imagine we wouldn't have had the web and the internet. It would have broken down. Teaching, communication, political communication, work situation, home office, all those different things were only available because the internet web functions and the technology worked. There were rather few technical problems, nearly none. It's really astonishing. But you saw where the limitations were. On the social and the organizational embeddedness. So how do we use it? How can it be, let's say, designed so that it can be better used? So it was really at that level where we had problems. Also at university, at schools, and so on. And also we see now the war against Ukraine. Also here, the internet and the social media play an important role. For example, the impact Zelensky has today is based also on the use of social media. And they're really somehow amplifying communication. I don't want to neglect that this or disinformation and things like that, but it also plays a very positive role there in humanitarian and democratic aspect. Having said this, only 2 slides on informatics, okay? But half of the audience is informatics, so it's... it's a very short history. We had the first study programs in 1970 worldwide. And today we have the Latin of today. Lopriano, he's the chair of the Austrian Science Council. He's an Egyptologist. I think he is not right. I think this sentence is not right. But how it's, let's see, from the outside projected into computer science informatics. They say that it's a fundamental concept. It's broad. It's science and engineering, so we are influencing as subject and subject, informatics in both respects. So we are having an application in other sciences, we have a role in applications, and we do research on ourselves. If you look at complexity theory, at proof theory, computer verification, operating system, this is research we do within computer science or informatics. I like very much the definition of Christian Nygaard. He's a Turing Prize winner, and he was also the creator of the first object-oriented programming language, Simula. He's coming from simulation with a lot of applications in environmental sciences. So he was really fundamental for that. And he say, instead of computer science, where you look at the computer itself, he say informatics, it's broader. It has its science, information processes in artifacts, which is the computer, in society and nature. And this is a broader phenomena. It's looking also at the paradigmatic view of it. And also when you see at David Baltimore, he's a Nobel Prize winner in medicine, he's a biologist. He was phrasing that biology today is information science, looking at how it's also changing science, but as well as you understand it, what are the paradigms you are using. One thing I could not omit from the history of computing is that you have also in the past already two different views on it. It's on problem solving. When you look at simulation with the AIS, John von Neumann, with the first weather forecast in simulation studies, already in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, really solving problems. And on the other side, you had Turing, with the Turing test, where he was thinking how human brain works. And he was defining intelligence in a procedural way. Whether you agree with this definition or not is another issue. But he was computer science using for understanding human thinking. These are two different approaches which are still with us, or two different views what we are doing. We observe a change from a calculator to a worldwide machine, connected machine everywhere, sometimes nearly invisible. You can see it if you think of Internet of Things. It's distributed where you don't know where the chips are, but they're interacting. If you have a technical point of view, you can understand that our systems consists of a stack of different technology, of different pieces, both hardware and software. And virtualization means that we are delegating more and more tasks from hardware to software, which is efficient, and it's easier to change. So this means virtualization, we are going from hardware to software, and more is delegated to software. VW realized that. They already founded a software company, realizing that their cars are based on Android operating system, which is not their own, which is not proprietary. They're using other technology. So they are now developing their own software, realizing that in the car, the central part of the car is software. It's not anymore those different hardware pieces. Having said this, everything touched by software becomes a computer. This is the real, let's say, phenomenological point of view. And secondly, all those things are connected. So it's not only every chip becomes a computer because there's software on that, or every piece which is controlled by software. Google sees the car as data collector, not as a mobility means, okay? They're interested in automatic driving because they can collect data. They use mobility for having data collection. So they use it as a computer. Touched by software becomes computer. And the second thing, it's connected. So we have a worldwide machine controlled by software, not controlled sometimes by software, which has an immense power. I want to have one additional thing, because we are sitting in a privileged world, that we still have this digital divide. So we have an internet penetration in Western countries, 90%, US and Europe. US more, Northern America. But if you go to other areas, Africa, you have 40% below 40%. So this is if I say we have a digital physical world where participation is mandatory, we do not offer access to everybody. We exclude huge part of the world. So this is one of the challenges which is ahead of us. Second observation, and then I leave this part of computer science. I have some remarks on artificial intelligence because this is one of the major discussions today. What is the role of the humans? What is the role of a machine? How does the interface look like? How is automatic processing? Are there autonomous machines or not? We have this discussion between utopia and dystopia, which is also somehow in different parts of the world we see it differently. For those of you who are in sociology and humanities, Ralf Schwentner, it's a very interesting book. He's an Austrian sociologist. He was professor in Freiburg, and he died already. And he wrote an interesting book, History of the Future, where he looked at our visions in different periods of time. And he related it to the specific economic situation. We have said once we have negative and sometimes we have positive. So if you have a chance, read it. AI, it's a simulation of human behavior. It's, let's say, the machine showing similarity to human behavior. There is no hard definition of AI or of AI systems. Very often we speak only about complex software systems. For example, if you read, and Mr. Wiesmüller has done the European AI regulation proposal, when you read the definition of AI systems, it's complex systems, complex software systems, which shows some autonomy, but in essence it's complex software systems. There is used in these different areas. It's already 70 years old. It's the Dartmouth conference with the big fathers. It's the only fathers of computer science and AI, Winston, Simon, and so on. And since then we had, let's say, winter and summers. We had summers where we said it would solve everything. Today we live in a summer, but there were many winters between, okay, where those what was, let's see, foreseen did not happen. The current one is, in essence, based on technology stack, coming from other areas. It's computing power and memory and accessible data. It's not research in AI itself. The means, the tools, the algorithm we have in AI today, which is the database, the data-driven AI, is 50 years old. If you go to neural nets and those things. It's really behind are the Googles. You know? They created the big data sources we have to process this big data. There's one, the president for the Institute for the Future of Technology. I think this, it's not so, the name is not so important, but I think this is very important. We tend to overestimate the effect of technology on the short time, but underestimate on the long term. I think at the moment we are overestimating the possibility of AI. And we call many things AI which is not AI, especially since it's not well defined. But on the long run, I think it has big impact. We have two of those approaches, and these are important because it's also from an epistemological point of view. One is the logic-based AI, where the world is described with a set of rules and facts, and based on these rules and facts, you can prove sentences about the world. Okay? The issue is, can everything be well formulated? Well means formally, not in the humanist sense, but in the strict mathematical logical sense. And this is exploding, because you want to describe a priori the knowledge about the world. And you assume that you have a picture of the world which is somehow true given the set of facts and rules, okay? There's some technological formal developments where you can have contradicting rules, you can combine it with probabilities, things like that. multi-value logic and so on. But at the end, you assume you have an a priori knowledge about everything, okay? And you can really deduce new things based on these facts and rules. The second one is more what today is successful. Today, let's say, I hope nobody's coming from AI, from this, but today it's applied statistics, okay? This is a very sloppy term, okay? You have neural nets, classification, you have a large amount of data, which is accessible, which is important. Because if you have data which is not accessible, it doesn't help you, okay? And from this data you learn, okay? Showing examples. The major part is supervised learning. You show positive and negative examples. It's very successful, for example, in pattern recognition, image recognition, where in some area it's past human performance in medical areas, in classifying disease. But there are problems. You cannot explain the result. So it's a black box, okay? This is the issue because everybody speaks today about explainable AI. How does such a data-driven system come to its conclusion? This is not clear. It's not even clear for the machine because it's so many layers that it's not so easy to describe it. There are bias. This is a well-known problem. But I want to say nearly every data has a bias. The bias depends on the objective of the data. Why it is collected? What is the background of the data? Is it used in the correct context? Bias is a very difficult problem. Because if you want to avoid bias, you have to have a normative view. What do you really want to have? So bias is not simple. And there's lack of common sense, background knowledge, which is somehow could be defined by this logic-based, but it's missing in these neural networks, okay? Common sense, it's a dangerous word for you because science is to pass common sense, okay? We don't want to have naive physics. We are happy that we have Newton's physics and quantum theory, okay? So common sense is not just positive annotated, but you need some common sense knowledge about your daily life and things like that. And at the end, it goes back. What is intelligent? Is it only in the brain? Is it embedded in the body? Is it embedded in society? Look at the intelligence of an ant colony moving. This is also showing intelligent behavior. What is intelligence? This is not answered yet by the AI community. And I think not by psychology either. So if you want to have AI and human decision-making, we do not very well understand AI. And I want to tell you, we do not well understand human decision-making, okay? So what do we understand? So maybe you can help us then. Okay, so it's more than technology or computer science. You see this social expansion, everything. And it's more interesting, this one. You have here in the Baltic states separated lanes for those looking at their mobile, because otherwise it's too dangerous. Okay? Normally they also have something over the ears. This is in Augsburg, where the street lamps are on the street, so the traffic lamps, traffic signs are on the street, because if you go like that, you see it. If you cannot watch, okay? And the thing is, if you have something over your ears for music, you cannot even hear it, okay? So they put it on earth, okay? And this is the best, okay? I'm not photographing where I am. I'm myself where I might be, okay? So it's self-referentiality. It's really the web is full. These are most of the pictures, but what is the most used picture in the web? There was a study done by Google. What is the most photographed object in class? Not an individual, but... Not selfie, cats. Cats are even more, but I don't know, they did not teach cats to make selfies. Then it would be even... Okay. This brings me to the web. And this is really, which is the base of monopolization in the web. It's an interesting paper by Moshe Wadi called How the Hippie Destroyed the Internet. It's an editorial in the communication of the ACM. Moshe Wadi is one of the partners in our Digital Humanism. He's coming from Logic. And he says there is a root of the web in the US counterculture, like this declaration of independence of the cyberspace and so on. Everything should be free, we don't want to pay. Free information sharing, we had explosion of information. The web did not limit those who can put information on the web. There were other proposals, for example, from Austrian Professor Maurer, who had a more strict approach to the web, but which would have limited the information insertion. So this was the free internet, and this was the rise of the search engines, because there was so much information that you could not find things. Then the problem was how to sustain such an infrastructure, such systems. Google is a good example. Google was close to bankruptcy. They did not know how to earn money. They had the best search engine, but no income. Page and Brian were very proud to have the fastest and best search engine, but they didn't know how to make money with it. Then was Eric Schmidt who changed it to the advertisement-based business model, which is really like newspapers, where the advertisers pay to be found on the websites, okay? But there are important extensions on the web, which is the danger for classical newspapers, okay? It's personalization. It's your result. Look at Bezos, Amazon. I want to have so many different shops as I have customers virtually, not one physical. It's recommendation. Because you cannot only search, you need recommendations. The system recommends something, okay? It recommends either by your past history, what you have done, or by users similarly to you. So we are to a similar, you have bought this, I have bought this, then we look at the intersection and what you have bought and I not is proposed to me. Similar to newspaper papers. So it's recommendation. There to optimize clicks. It's something like emotional engagement, which is obvious. Look at the statement of Forgan from Facebook. She said that Facebook knows how to optimize clicks, to optimize advertisement revenue, even it's not good for the user, okay? This was public stated. And we are changing user behavior. We are changing our behavior. There's a very good paper by Stuart Russell in the book you have in front of you. So we are changing behavior as it is forecasted by the systems. Okay, because we are clicking what is proposed. It's not what we want, we are clicking on that what is proposed by the system. So what we like, what we do is defined by a distance measure in a similarity matrix. It's not our individual freedom. What we look at Twitter and so on. We get recommendation. So our individual freedom is fiction here. It's the system defining. It's a mathematical distance measure. This is paid with our data because it's paid normally by the advertisement business, but indirectly with our data. You know, surveillance with Zuboff. We are changing from the counterculture as a citizen to a consumer. We are user, product, and producer. We are using it. We are the product. Our data are used, our behavior, and we are generating those data. So we are also the producer. So it's something like an economic perpetuum mobile. So the vision of individual freedom led to a system where Tim Berners-Lee said the system is failing. Just very short to the web business landscape. It's interesting, these are very young companies and you could add several of them. They are platform companies, I'm coming back to that. The basis is the user network and the knowledge about the user and market and competitors. It's not the infrastructure. This is really, and they are virtualizing the business. Amazon is trading everything. They don't care about the product. They are sitting on the transaction. Google is even a level above. Information and product description for them is the same. So it's really a virtualization abstraction. And it's coming from outside, innovation. This is something you know already, platform capitalization. This is the value of those companies. And when you look at it at December 21, it's mostly those platform companies. You have something like Tesla. This has changed now already. Then you have a graphic card producer. This is a chip producer, and this is investment company, and this is a Chinese company. Okay. Bad news for Europe: no European company. Okay. If you look 10 years back, other industries and other states, other regions of the world. Here you see what really means virtualization of business. They sit on the transaction layer, on the information layer. They don't sit on the product layer. This is an advantage. They don't have problems by production. And they have the knowledge about everything. They have the knowledge about the market, the users, the buying behaviors. They can adapt to changes. Amazon knows more about Swarovski than Swarovski. Okay? Because Swarovski sells via Amazon. They know more about the Swarovski jewelry than Swarovski itself, which is not a problem for Amazon. Might be one for the other way around. So platforms, it's an open system for users and company. It's an organizational market arrangement. It's important. It's a new form, governed by common rules and architecture and services, but you can enter and leave, and there's the network effect, grows with the number of participants. This is the important thing. The winner takes it all. Okay? If you look at the separation of those big platform companies, in each sector you have one. Okay? And sometimes they attack each other, but they watch it very carefully. They are in several markets, very profitable. Acquisition of company. They are acquiring, buying companies, startups, not always using what they buy. Okay? They just want to clear the market very often. Sometimes they use, sometimes they don't use. Investing in R&D. They are competing with universities. In this data science AI business, we cannot compete with Google. We cannot compete with Amazon. An AI database, a data science AI professor in the US, in this level gets 1 million per year. Okay? We cannot compete with them. They have the data, the means, and they are winners of the pandemic. Unlike most traditional companies, this is they have money to buy and to move. Okay, so I'm coming to digital humanism. You are nervous because it's too long.
It's fine.
Okay. So we have two sides. Something which it keeps the system running. It's essential for solving fundamental problems. If you look at environmental issues, energy savings, United Nations development goals, so it's success with respect in subject, with research and application. So in your humanities studies, you use computers, computer science. You use our means and our tools. And this changes the way you work, even if you don't want. Okay? How you publish, how you communicate, how you collect data. And we are a subject. I just want to mention we have huge success in software verification. We have in problem-solving areas where we really have success. Complexity theory, we are proceeding. And it's important for democratic movements and humanity activities, okay? You see it today. It's still not only the devil. There are two sides. On the other side, we have critical issue, multiple dependent. So they are related to each other. You cannot isolate them. Because if you look at the platform companies, they are very strong in AI. They are very strong in the echo chambers. They are dangerous for the sovereignty of states and individuals. Okay? Corona app in Austria, in Europe, was not decided by the states, the architecture and the way which one. It was decided by Apple and Google because they had the app stores. UK and France had a different approach and a different software, which was not supported by the app store of the big companies. They could not use it. So it was the only atomic powers of Europe were not able to use their own software, mobile software, during the pandemic. What does this mean to sovereignty of state? Okay? By the way, I think the decision of Google and Apple was right, because the others made a mistake based on privacy issues and things like that. But they were not sovereign enough to implement their own software in the mobile environment. You have AI and decision-making, the roles of humans. What should be decided by humans and when? Sometimes we want that the machine decides. Think of your heart pacemakers and things. I want the machine to decide that because it's in milliseconds. We cannot use. Okay? Sometimes it's this surveillance and privacy. Today, very important is warfare issue, work situation, automation, but also on a different dimension. There's the work of Casilli. He gave a presentation in our lectures where he showed that the work situation in the AI environment is copying old colonial dependencies. Where cheap work from cheap money is done in India and Asia, and profit is made in the US and Europe. So this is as in previous times. And you have this gig economy where you see the computer scientists, the coders are the strong guys, they are independent, they can decide on themselves. Okay? But what's about human rights, labor rights? What's about trade unions? Okay? So we have all this, which brings us to the notion of Tim Berners-Lee. And this is where we started the workshop. This was the background. And this was somehow when we started in 2019, we had these participants on a 2 days workshop from really different disciplines. It was really from history to anthropology to philosophy, economy. It started by a meeting of the advisory board of the faculty of computer science, of informatics, because we implemented an international advisory board of renowned international scientists in computer science. And after 3 years, they said, okay, now we have heard enough, let's do something good. And then they say, okay, digital humanism is a topic, let's do something. And then we started. It's similar to the Popper work on responsibility as scientist, which is not so easy task because normative issues in science are dangerous, okay? Who decides on the norms? Okay? So this is what we have defined digital humanism. It's really looking at the complex interplay between informatics and humanity, to analyze, to describe it, and to influence it with an objective, with universal human rights. Okay? It's not only for the individual, but also for a society, which is important. It's not only individual freedom above everything. There's social, societal responsibility. This is how we defined it. It's a complex process with its own dynamics, but it's not God-given. It's not automatic. You can interfere. And if you look what happens today with the platform companies in the East, in Ukraine, and in Russia, there is a primacy of politics. They can close down, they can say, okay, we don't go there, we don't use it. So there's a primacy of quality. You can interfere, okay? It's dependent if you want to do it. So it's technology according to our values. This is coming from the manifesto. We have the freedom, but also the responsibility. We are the agents of our own life. It's up to us. And this is important for a democratic society, which is related to human rights. It also refers to enlightenment. I would really like to reference Nida Rümelin and Natalie Weidenfeld with the book on Digital Humanism, which is more related to film, movie, and AI decision-making. And I see digital humanism as a rational, scientific, democratic answer to the web where everything goes. So it's really something, this paradigm, anything goes paradigm in the web. It's really a rational answer to that, democratic answer. This is what's behind digital humanism. This is our manifesto. It's not only a reflection, but a call for action. There are some core principles which are still valid, even if they're 3 years old. It's related to democracy. Then we talk about regulation, which is very often missing today. I was interested yesterday, there was a meeting, United Nations meeting, related to the internet as a common public good. Regulation is very hard to argue there, because the big companies don't want that, okay? Role of research and education. So I wouldn't change one word of the manifesto. I think it was well written. But this is the glory to the others, not to me. Since then, we had online lectures, 25. We have about 70 hours online lectures with all the slides. We have about, I think, 80 presentations on the different topics I have mentioned previously. It will be now semantically annotated. This is done by a German university. They do it without, this is university cooperation. They said, okay, we do it for you. You don't have to pay for that. They just do it, and then you can semantically search in this huge source of knowledge. We had 2 weeks ago this innovation and research roadmap workshop for 2 days in Vienna. Since then, we have the manifesto now in 8 languages. The last one added was Catalan. We have even Farsi. It's in the Austrian government program and in the Viennese government program. This in Austria, so they have this Poisdorf Declaration of Foreign Minister of Austria, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. We have activities of the Austrian Ministry, of your ministry, but also of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Sorry for not remembering the long names of ministries. One is the Research Fellowship Program, thanks to you. There's a research program in Vienna. But what is equally important, without that, this would not work. We succeeded in creating an international intellectual core of international scientists from different countries, not only from the West. And we have published this book, which has now over 110,000 downloads. So it's really quite a success. It's a pity that I don't get money for that. Time is changing. You have a set of international civil society and academia-based initiatives with whom we cooperate. Even standardization organizations are going into this direction with IEEE and a software engineering standard. You have on a political level, you have Europe, US, you have digital humanism activities in Brussels, also supported by the ministry with other European states. And you have United Nations Internet, OECD principles. So there is a huge, let's say, movement into this direction, into responsible, let's say, relationship to IT and its use. there are challenges. I think digital humanism is a broader, encompassing concept. It may serve as a European model, whereas as US, everything goes, and the control approach of China. The question is this still valid today? This is a political issue. It's not. I think there's also some technology aspects behind those conflicts. To make it real, this is a multidimensional framework. You have to go on the problem areas I mentioned previously, from economic perspective, human perspective, decision-making on AI. So you cannot separate the internet from AI. You cannot separate the internet from software. You cannot separate the internet from economic performances. You cannot separate it from sovereignty. It's related. This makes it a complex issue. You need those different disciplines, from informatics to humanities, social sciences, economics, from analysis to action. And this is the problem of interdisciplinarity, which is a dangerous word because everybody of us says it. But if young colleagues want to be interdisciplinary, they have a hard problem, because who is evaluating them? And if there are two disciplines, you can be sure that one discipline is not satisfied. So it's a self-killing attitude. But anyway, we have to do it. So this is a thing for this. I'm happy that we can cooperate. And you need different activities. So it's not only research, it's innovation, it's experiment, it's legal and political actions, it's networking. And we have a heterogeneous audience. Today we have here academia and decision makers, but it's also civil society issues. Last slide. It will not stop, and we will have further technology and service waves. This is not the end of the story. There will be the next technology and the next service wave. Technology may disappear, okay? And then reappear on another layer. So we will have complexity increase in technology and structure. There's a complexity paradox because we use those tools for solving problems, which means reducing complexity. At the same time, we are increasing complexity, okay? It's not, but it's not given, not God-given. And I want to finish with this quote from John von Neumann, "Can we survive technology?" And today, this is really even more important because he wrote this in front of the nuclear bomb in the 50s, atomic bomb, okay? Can we manage technology? And this is now becoming important again. It's not only related to IT, but in general to technology. I thank you very much.
Well, it's us who thank you, Hannes Werthner. Thank you so much. And I invite you to join me. I think you deserve a glass of water now. Yeah. So maybe join me here for a moment. I would also then want to, in a moment, to invite Nena on. Oops. So then I should over the water to you.
No, it's not broken. Thank you. I have it.
Okay.
You're in the middle.
Yeah, I would also want to give Nena the opportunity to present her program, but maybe as a short follow-up, really short follow-up on your presentation, Hannes Werthner. And thanks again for this overview, for this tour de horizon that you gave to us on the topic of digital humanism. You started this initiative in 2019. I remember it must have been 2020. This institute is organizing a festival annually on the humanities. By the way, this institute in English we call Institute for Human Sciences. It's probably a wrong translation. I think we should be called Institute for Humanities. But now that for such a long time we use this name, we have debated in the past if it is not maybe a wrong translation. Anyway, we were organizing, preparing this festival, Humanities Festival, And a colleague came to me and said, but there is also this new thing. We should include this in the festival. This is the digital humanism. And I said, digital humanism? You mean digital humanities? Because this, we all have heard about digital humanities. I had never heard, I have to admit, in 2020 about digital humanism. She said, no, I really think it's called digital humanism. There's something going on in Vienna. Maybe we should relate to them. We should link up to them. This brings me to a little question, Hannes Werthner. Digital humanities we all know, and you said also for the humanities, digitization is drastically changing everything, for sure. But while digital humanities is about how to research human society, human life, as we used to say in German, Geisteswissenschaften, human mind, by the means of digital help. Yeah, this is what digital humanities is about. Digital humanism has a very different setup, a very different idea. Digital humanism is about, in general, rethinking, evaluating, reshaping digitization as such, and to question digital practices, or to look for the best way of how to improve digital practices. And maybe to put it like this, not just to see digitization as a means for economic growth, but to see digitization as a means for the progress of society. This is how I would sum up the goal and aim of digital humanism. Maybe I can put it in a short question to the end. Hannes Werthner, if you would have to say what digital humanism is about in short. And I would suggest, basically, I think in the end, it is very much about something that we know for a long time, namely about human rights. Would you agree to that?
This is too abstract and too much reduction. I wanted just to add some word on your digital humanities, because this is something which is really working in the field for some time. It's really questioning my role, or our role as computer scientists. When we go to digital humanities, in essence, you use our means, our tools, our paradigm in your research, let's say, where you research about society, about human thinking. We have the issue, are we emperor or plumber coming to you? Are we telling you how to do the things from an algorithmic point of view, even from a classification structural point of view? Or are we the tool producers, where you hopefully understand the tools? Okay? And this is the thing where it comes together with digital humanism, because I think we need a cooperation on an equal playing field. Because we need you, because at the end it's about a more just society respecting human rights for individuals and society by digital means, and there we need other sciences. So this is something where we can look at this interdisciplinarity from a different point of view, but in both sense we need to cooperate. Well, short question with a long answer, because it was too short, your question.
Sorry, normally I'm known for my too long questions, so I try to improve. You see.
This is where you have to learn. Computer scientists also tend to speak very long. Okay.
Yeah. I could go on with a really long question now, but looking at the time, I really think this is the moment to integrate you, Nena, into the talk. Nena Mocznik, as Mr. Michael Wiesmann said in the beginning, you will have the privilege to be always the first Digital Humanism Fellowship in this fellow in this new program. Nena Mocznik is a Paris-based researcher, and also, I should say, not only researcher, but practitioner. As a researcher, you're a social and political scientist by education. And yesterday, you told me that you were a bit unsatisfied with only being a researcher, and you also became somebody volunteering and working in humanitarian aid. You have dedicated a lot of time to the help of refugees in France. You were also working in Calais. We all know Calais and what it stands for, all the problems related to it. And the project that you have handed in to us here for this program is something that a project that combines both of your activities, namely your research approach and your work as a person helping refugees in France. It is called Moving Moms, and it is about the invention, improvement of a digital app helping refugee moms, helping them to find the right healthcare, helping them to find the right addresses for healthcare. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your work and about the project that you're working on.
I think I would never be able to say so short as you did, because just my title is 5 lines, so good job, thank you for this introduction. First of all, I would like to say thank you, of course, for having me as a first digital fellow here at IVM. I'm very pleased to be here, and of course it's a big honor to be able to develop this project. It's really a project that I'm starting, I would say, also because of the pandemic. So for this reason, perhaps I would share a little bit about my work before pandemic, because I was very, very analog. So if you were talking a lot about digital technology and this part of digital humanism, I think I will come now from the other side and talk a lot about the society and how I, as a social scientist and also humanitarian worker, maybe contribute in this way. So before the pandemic, I spent quite a lot of time working in post-conflict Bosnia and Herzegovina, primarily with women that were detained and sexually violated, raped during the conflict. So there I was working as a practitioner, but also as an ethnographer, as a researcher, trying to understand how what are the long-term consequences of such crimes, and how this trauma is then transmitted to the further generations, and how this affects peace building and reconciliation practices. Now, why I'm mentioning this work is not just because I was very, very analog, and at this time we really were not thinking about how we can include digital support in healing, reconciliation, and peace-building practices, but also because I came to Vienna without knowing or without anticipating what's going to happen and what's happening right now in Ukraine. And I think everyone who is working or have been working in Western Balkans or in the conflict related to the solution of Yugoslavia is now probably personally and professionally quite triggered, because there is a lot of similarities going on with the conflict in the 90s and what's happening now in Ukraine. On the other hand, what is also very interesting, and here I think it's a very right moment to talk about digitalization and digital humanism, but also humanitarianism, if I complicate a little bit this conversation tonight, is because as a researcher and someone who was practitioner working with the war that happened in the 90s, we were dealing with the evidence, with the research data, with the population that worked in a so this conflict happened in a very, very analog times. So all the evidence that we were trying to collect in the last, let's say, I don't know, for me 15 years, but even before, we had to have people, witnesses, survivors. We rely basically on media, on traditional media, to understand and to collect the evidence on crimes. Whereas today, what is happening in Ukraine, I think we are facing a complete opposite type of conflict. So even though if I was optimistic that, okay, we are collecting all this evidence and trying to see how people can recover in long term, now we have this conflict that's going on also online, so this kind of online war, that I believe the entire way of how we are going to research conflict as such, and then also trying to work on peace building, reconciliation, and recovery once this conflict hopefully soon ends. So to me, it's very interesting now to understand and to see the knowledge that I have from my 10 years practice there and what I can use now in this conflict in Ukraine, because this is such a different dimension of of events, particularly of all the particularly because of all the digitalization that happened in this 20, 30 years since 90s. So just to give you one example, the woman that I worked with, of course there was women who testified immediately when the crimes happened, and then there had to be someone who covered this and brought this to us, to the audience, to the Western Europe, which was usually very traditional media coverage. Today, when events happen, we know immediately, and not just that we know, we also don't know if this is true or not. Of course, we also didn't know before, but today it's even more complicated. So everything is happening, but maybe it also doesn't. So we constantly live in this kind of like space of overflow of information, but at the same time, do we really know actually more what is happening right now in Ukraine? And is all this information helpful for us as humanitarian workers to intervene, and then also to researchers to understand this conflict? Another thing, so what I'm looking right now, and when I will come to the project that I will say a couple of words a bit later, what was also interesting in this span, in this time, was another event which happened in 2015, so the so-called refugee crisis. I also worked back then in the Balkan route, which was very, very, I would say, different kind of refugee crisis than we have now, also from the gender lenses, because now we have mostly women and children migrating to Europe. Before we had majority of men coming. But this event in 2015 was, for me, what I'm doing right now, also extremely important, because I think for us it was first time when we realized how mobile devices are crucial for everyone who was transiting to Europe, so for refugees and migrants who were coming. So, of course, before also people were using different devices, different online tools, they were trying to connect to different ways. But I think in 2015, we really realized we are living this new digital era. And it was really, really obvious. Just again, to give you an example, one of the most trafficked and desired items still today in the refugee camps is something that is related to mobile devices, SIM cards, chargers, and so on and so forth. Not the food, not the clothes, not the medicaments, really something, of course, because this is a way to get information. And at this time, just in 2015 and 16, there was more than 1,000 apps developed just for refugees. Of course, today, most of it is digital waste, which I don't want to do again, just to produce another app, so I'll have to really rethink all this project. But this just tells us how humanitarian work really is also affected and how important this digitalization is. Of course, it's also very dangerous, it has downsides, but I want to see the positive impact that it can have. So for me, now bringing all this together, being interested in the long-term impact of gender-based violence in conflict, and then with the refugee crisis and the interventions that we can have as humanitarian workers. And today, unfortunately, it's horrible to say that this conflict in Ukraine is so important now, actually, for this project, and it came really on time, because it's basically, we have now this, as I said, huge, a very, very different refugee crisis where we have mostly women, young girls and children coming to Europe, traveling, leaving men behind, and we had this before. Now we will just have masses of population that will need services that I'm trying to focus on even more. Because in 2015, when all these apps were developed in this technology, they were providing, of course, information that is valuable and important for refugees and migrants, but they were almost completely omitting the issues that are very, very specific for female refugees. I would like to say that these issues, I'm talking about reproductive and sexual health related questions, problems if you want, I would like to say that this should be matter of everyone in society, but unfortunately, especially when we are talking about refugees coming, not necessarily now from Ukraine, but for instance, 6 months ago when we had refugees coming from Afghanistan to France, or for instance in Calais, in Dunkirk, we have a lot of female refugees coming from Kurdistan, Somalia, Sudan, countries where you know that sexual and reproductive health, human rights are super, super violated, if they even exist. So when we have these people, these women and girls transiting to Europe, especially to Western Europe, where sexual and reproductive health services are available, we still don't have this, I would say, mediation. We still don't have this translation how to provide these services to these women and girls. Now, why not? I want to say, we have a lot of platforms. We have apps. So my app is not innovative in this way. I'm aware that there is people developing these things and that there is things already on the market. However, the problem and the challenge of most of these, I would say, services, platforms, digital tools, devices that are already available are that we are designing them still mostly from the perspective, from the very, I would say, progressive, liberal democratic Western perspective. So when imagine women from a completely different cultural environment, I will give now the example of, again, Afghan women, because they just recently came to France, and this was kind of a huge issue. These women have different needs when it comes to reproductive and sexual health. Of course, I'm talking specifically about mothers. Why? Because every woman between, let's say, 12, 49 can potentially be mother if she wants or no. When women are refugees, they don't want to be mothers. However, a lot of women become mothers. Now, why they become mothers? Mostly because there is lack of information, there is lack of, obviously, education on sexual and reproductive health issues, but also because they are not aware that services that are probably not available in their countries, or the services that they would not ask for because of the different cultural, social barriers, are available free of charge to refugees also in Europe. And with this, I also see there could be a huge improvement just trying to provide these services in general understanding and well-being of people in these terms when it comes to, I'm talking here about reproductive health.
Yeah,
so
can I
just
ask you
to
something?
wrap up?
Yeah, yeah, please. No, I just wanted to ask to maybe bring it back to how I introduced in the beginning by saying that you combine these two fields that you have been working on in the past. Hannes Werthner told us in his talk about the pros and cons of interdisciplinarity, and I think we all know it. And I saw you nodding when he said that, so you're aware of that. But you are in some sense doing something even more dangerous. It's not just interdisciplinary what you do, but you also try to combine the research and the university field with your work as a practitioner. Just to maybe give us a little better understanding, how to imagine this when you have started to develop this in France. How close was your collaboration with universities on this? How close was your collaboration with people engineering this app? How close was your collaboration with the refugees? You said those are the ones who should somehow design it. It should be done from their perspective, not from... Just to give us a very short, like an idea of how you're doing this.
Yeah. I think it's super important, and we just briefly, I don't know, with someone I talked before the event about this, that the problem that we have is we do not collaborate between each other. I guess we are maybe a little bit afraid of each other. We don't speak the language to collaborate. The entire project and the idea and everything what I told you right now was drafted when I was doing humanitarian work in Calais, and when I saw the need of women and that we need something like this. Then I met people who are developing apps, who are developing platform softwares to support humanitarian action. When it comes to universities, I believe that this is the reason why I'm here, because unfortunately a lot of, I would say, conventional, traditional universities are still struggling to get into interdisciplinary space. So we do have to still search for the places where we can connect, as you said, business with academic research and with humanitarian action. But I would have to say that it's important also for us as individuals to go to these different places, because the if we see the failure, or like when digital technologies are not working with population today, I think it's also because we are designing or providing them from a very, very limited perspective that we have. So a lot of apps, for instance, that are already out there for refugees were unfortunately developed from people who have know-how, skills, either in IT, in technology as such, or in human sciences, but are not really in contact with the field.
Yeah. Maybe just to add, it's maybe an important piece of information that originally you come from Slovenia, because when you were referring to the Yugoslavia problems before, this just as a background, I think a very important information. I think it is impossible for anybody being the first junior fellow in this program to represent the whole program. It can only be a very, very small aspect, and I think this is what we have heard from you about. If I would sum it up, and I think, and I hope Hannes Werthner would agree to this, if I would sum up one of the basic ideas of the Digital Humanism program by saying that technologies should be shaped in a way that they serve human needs and human values, rather than allowing technologies to shape humans. I think then what you just gave to us is a very good example and a very good way of how to realize one of the central goals of this program. This, you understand, it is almost sounds like a final word, and I would actually intend it as a final word because we have already run over time. In this house, normally it's good practice to have a discussion with the audience, but this program of tonight was more like a presentation of the program that we are going to do. And Hannes Werthner has touched upon so many topics and upon so many questions. I think this gives us enough to think for many years to come, not only for tonight. So, Hannes Werthner, if you agree, we would close here, unless you would want to add something, say a final word.
No, I'm looking forward to this cooperation in those both directions, let's say the direction of different disciplines, but also in realizing things. And this is what you say, it's really going into the realization. I think this is an important issue. It's not only about theory, it's about making it real. So this is, I think, it's maybe the even harder challenge. So we need to cooperate, but we also have to make it real, and I'm looking forward to that.
Me as well. So thanks to both of you, Hannes Werthner, Nena Mocznik. This is your applause. And now you see, tonight we are very few people here in the room because we decided to rather go for the live stream tonight. In the shadow of these gruesome happenings in Ukraine, we almost miss the latest news that numbers of infections have reached record level, and we decided for tonight that we do not necessarily have to feed this, but nevertheless we decided we will have, as we planned originally, our little reception for now fewer people downstairs. Join us for a glass of wine, join us for a bit to eat downstairs. You can also go outside, we can open the door and join us there and continue the discussion there. Thanks to you again, thanks to all of you for joining us tonight.